So in the previous session, we have seen how to clean the data. We just started with Power Query. So the first step that you usually do is you remove the unnecessary rows, you remove the unnecessary columns, then you check the data type of each and every column. Each and every column should not have the data type as ABC123. So ABC123, we change it to some other data type. Once we change it, we get errors. So in error, we have three different mechanisms: keep error, remove error, and replace error. So we have to select one of the three options. Keeping error will just give you the list of errors. Removing error will show you, will remove the rows with errors, and replace error will replace the error values with specific swell value. Okay, so those are the options that you have. Now, if you want to understand more about your column, then you have three checkboxes. One is column quality, second is column profile, third is column distribution. Column distribution will show you uniqueness and distinctiveness of your data. Column profile will give you column statistics like minimum, maximum, empty, zero, average, standard deviation, those type of information. And column quality will show you the values, the percentage of values with valid data, percentage of values with error data, percentage of values with empty data. Those are the type of information that you can get with your checkboxes. Okay. Now moving on, there are other operations also which you can do in Power Query. Like in usual cases, when we get any type of data, we have to actually process it. We have to actually clean it. Okay. After cleaning and processing it, the next thing that you have to do is you might have to add additional columns, or you might have to transform your data to get certain values. So if I want to do such operations, can I do it in Power Query? Yes, that is possible. So let's start looking into those operations. So let me load an Excel file. So I'll say get data and Excel workbook. And from here, I will load one file called as aircraft sample data. So this is my file, aircraft sample data. So this is my sheet. So like this, I said, we will always click on transform data. So here I click on transform data. It will open the Power Query editor. Anyways, so we are here in the Power Query. I'll remove this column distribution. I will just keep column quality on. Now, in this case, if you see the data by yourself, what you would realize is there are no rows to remove. There are no columns to remove. Everything is proper. The only thing that you have to do now is you have to first promote your header. So if you see here, you have the serial number, region, country, lesser. Okay, then aircraft type, engine type, date of manufacture, all this are your column headings. They are not your values. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to promote this as my header. So I will select use first rows as header option. When I select this, my headers would be promoted. And if you carefully observe, the data type of most of the columns have changed. Now scroll to the right and verify that every data type is proper. Okay, so let's start from here. Serial number, region, country, lesser, aircraft type, engine type, date of manufacture, delivery date, maturity date. So if you see here, the data type of maturity date is not proper. It is ABC123. So I can change it. So I can change it by right clicking, or I can change it by clicking on this ABC123 also. So I can click here and I can say maturity date is a date column. Okay, moving on, I will scroll to the right now. Security, rent 1.2, maintenance cost 3, 4, engine PSRV, engine LLP rate, OPU overhaul rate, landing gear overhaul rate, winglet sharklets, aircraft, this. Okay, so all good. So now I have issue in the delivery date, and of course I have some issues in the maturity date also, which is just not showing. Now let me click on the previous step and let me click here. I will see data issue in the maturity date and delivery date also. So you can see there is error in approximately 8 values in delivery date, and similarly here also you have errors in the 15 values. Okay, so what I will do for now is, since we have already looked into these steps, we can either do remove error, replace error, or keep error. For now I will just do the remove error. So when I do the remove error, the rows are removed and the data is proper. Okay, so this is what we have seen so far. Now the next step that you have to do is, let's say I have this maturity date column. Okay, and from this maturity date column I want to extract the year information or quarter information or month information, and I want to store it. So for that we have functions which we can use it directly. Now if I want to perform any operation in Power Query, I have two options. Okay, the first option is transform option, and second option is add column option. Okay, so if you observe this transform tab, in transform tab you will see functions for text column, functions for number column, and functions for date and time column. Exactly similar to this, when you go to add column, you will find functions for text, function for number, and function for date and time. If you carefully observe all the three I would say ribbons here for text, number, and from date and time, they are same in date add column also, and they are same in the transform also. So what is the difference? The difference is about the output that you want. For example, if I want to modify this existing column maturity date and I want to store the output in the same column, then in that case I use the transform tab. Okay, similar to this, if I don't want to modify this column, I want to keep the values in this column and I want to create a new column out of it, then I can perform the same step from the add column. Okay, so let me give you an example. Let me say that I want to get the year from this maturity date column. So I select this maturity date column, I go to transform. Now since this is date column, so I will apply the function from the date column. So you can see this is my date and time column. So from here I select date, I select year, and I say year. What it will do is it will extract the year from all the dates and it will store in the existing column. Can you see the output here? The output is present in the same maturity date column. So in this case, you have lost your original value. Now you are storing the transformed value. Okay, and the second way of doing this is selecting this, going to add column, date, and saying same thing, year and year. See what happens now. In this case, your maturity date column is intact. What we have done is we have extracted the year and we have stored the same information in the new column. Clear with this? Anyone has any questions about this tab? So transform will be used when I want to modify the existing column, and the add column would be used when I want to create a new column out of my existing column values. Anyone, any questions? Okay, moving on. So exactly similar to this, yeah, no questions. Yeah, so exactly similar to this, what I can actually do is I can extract more and more information from the columns. So let's see those options. So I will use the add column tab because it will keep or it will retain my existing column value. Okay, so similar to here, you can extract more information. But if you remember, whenever you have a date column, in date column, automatically date hierarchy is created, which is automatically storing year, quarter, month, and day information, right? So let's say I need something else. Let's say I need the week information. Okay, so let's say I want to get the week information. So I can select this maturity date column again. I can go to add column, and in here I can go to week, and in here I have an option called as week of year. So when I select the week of year, what it will do is for every date, it will extract the week information and it will store it. Okay, so what is the week of year? In a year, you have close to 53 weeks. Okay, 1 to 53 weeks is what you have in a year. So what it will do is it will check the date and it will calculate on which week number this particular date falls to, and it will give you that number. So for example, in this case, this date might be falling in the December end. That is why you see the 53 here. So if I check the maturity date here, yeah, 31st December 2018. So in this case, this date is falling on the last week of the year, which is the 53 week. Okay, that is why it is giving you the 53 number. Exactly similar to this, if I need the week of month, so in a month, I have usually 4 to 5 weeks. So if I want to get the week of the month, I can get that. I can click on this date column. I can select week from here and I can say week of month. So when I say week of month, this will give me a value between 1 to 6. Sometimes the week might have, a month might have 6 weeks. So this will give you information based on the date. So for every date, it will check on which week of the month it falls to, and it will give you that number. Okay. So these week information, it is usually used by production companies. Okay, production companies, they do not prepare their reports on month basis. They prepare their report on week by week basis. So in such cases, you can use this week column, you can use this week information, week of month or week of year information. Okay, next thing is calculating the day. So if I want to calculate the day, I can calculate the day. So day will give me the day information. For example, in 31st December 2018, day will give me 31st. Okay, but let's say if you want to calculate the day of the week, you can calculate the day of the week from here also. So in this case, this column will give you 7 values starting from 0 to 6. So as per your calendar, it will give you the output. For example, if I show you my calendar, in my calendar, Sunday is the first day and Saturday is the last day. So in this case, what will happen is for Sunday, it will return 0 and for Saturday, it will return 6. So for every date in the maturity date column, it is reading that date. It is checking on which day it falls to and it was giving you that number. Okay, exactly similar to this, I can select maturity date column again. I can go to day and I can get the name of the day also. So when I click on the name of the day, it will give me information like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like that. So if you see it here, for me, Sunday is 0 and Saturday is 6, like that. So you can get the name of the day information also directly from here. Okay. Another case is where I want to get the total number of days. Sometimes in order to calculate a value, you have to divide one value by another value. So in that case, you can use the number of days also. So for example, if I want to calculate base salary, so for that, if I want to divide salary by total number of days, so in that case, I can use the total number of days in a month. So for that, go to date function again. And from here, go to month and select days in month. When I select days in month, it will give you a number between 28, 29, 30, 31. Okay, depending on your month. Okay, so some months will have 28 days, some months will have 29 days, some months will have 30 days, and some months will have 31 days. So based on that, it can give you the output directly here. Clear with this? Any questions here? Okay, moving on. Now, the typical operation which everybody does when it comes to multiple date columns is subtracting dates. Okay, so let's say I have this maturity date and I have this delivery date. I want to subtract maturity date and delivery date and store the output in a new column. So for that, I can select maturity date column first, then I select delivery date column later. I press Control and I select these two columns. Then I go to date function and I select subtract days. When I select subtract days, what it will do is it will subtract maturity date and delivery date, and it will give you the output here. In this case, my maturity date is always bigger than the delivery date. See it here. So in this case, one date is in 2015, the other date is in 2018. So in this case, your maturity date is always bigger than the delivery date. So in this case, your difference would be always positive. Okay. Now in this case, what happened is I selected maturity date first and I selected delivery date later. Okay. That's why the subtraction happened like maturity date minus delivery date. Let's say if you want to do delivery date minus maturity date. So for that case, you can select delivery date here. You can select maturity date here. You can go to date and you can select subtract this. So when you do this, it is subtracted and it is giving you the output. Okay. So same output, but in the negative. Reason being is your delivery date is smaller than your maturity date. Okay. Exactly similar to this, if I have 3 date columns and if I want to calculate or if I want to get the smallest date out of these 3 columns. So this is my first, this is my second, this is my third. Now I have these 3 columns. I want to get the smallest date out of these 3 columns for every row, and I want to store it in a new column. So for that, I can go to this date and I can select earliest. When I select earliest, what it will do is it will calculate the lowest date or the smallest date out of these 3 columns, and it will store it in a new column. Exactly similar to this, I can find the highest date or the bigger date also. So for that also, I can select this 1, 2, 3. I can go to date and I can select latest. So when you do this, you'll get the latest date, or I would say the biggest date out of these 3 columns in a new column. Clear with this? Any questions? This earliest, latest and subtract days option will only be enabled whenever you select more than one column. Okay, so for subtracting days or for calculating, I would say your latest date or earliest date, you have to always select more than one columns. Okay, clear with this? Any questions?
No.
Okay. Now the next function that we will see is age. What happens is sometimes based on the date column, you have to calculate age. You have to calculate age in the sense age as of now. What is that? How many how many number of days have passed since this date, right? So those are the typical calculations that you might have to do. So in that case, you need to calculate the age. So for that, we have been given this age function. What it will do is it will subtract today's date from this dates present in this column, and it will give you the output. And the output format will be in the total number of days dot total number of hours colon total number of minutes colon total number of seconds. We call that format as durations. So once we select on this age function, what it will do is it will create a new column with the type as duration. Okay, so let me do this. I select this maturity date column. I click on age. So the first date in your column is maturity date column is 31st December 2018. Let's see what happens. So what it will do is it will subtract the today's date from this maturity date column. So in here you can see some values as positive, some values as negative. Wherever you see values as positive, those maturity dates are in the past, and wherever you see the value in the negative, those maturity date values are in the future. And if you carefully observe the data type of this column, this data type is of duration. You can see the duration type here. And if you see the format of this format of this data is total number of days dot total number of hours colon total number of minutes colon total number of seconds. Clear with this? In this case, this is my duration data type, which is giving me how many days, how many hours, how many minutes have passed. Now let's say I want to only get the total number of days information from this. So for that, click on this duration, and from here select the total days. So when I select total days, only days information is extracted, which is the first information here, and it is stored in the new table. Okay, exactly similar to this, if I want to convert these days into total years, that is also possible. So for that, I can select this total years information. So when I select this total years information, the day information is extracted from here, and in this case it gets divided by 365. Okay, so if I divide 365 by 1074 by 365, I will get 2.94 approximately. So yeah, so this is my information. Okay, so you can convert the total number of days into total years also. Another case is where I want to convert this into total hours. So if you want to convert this into total hours, you can also do that. In that case, what it will do is it will take this day value and it will multiply it by 24. So let me do this. Okay, so like this, you can convert the days difference or days difference from today also into total number of hours, total number of years, total number of days, total minutes, total seconds also. Okay, and you can use it in your calculation. Okay, any questions? Okay, so these are your date functions which you can use on specifically date columns. If you ask me which functions are used a lot, okay, from my perspective, subtracting two dates is used the most, then followed by age. We already have year, quarter, so quarter information is not used. Week information is of course used, so you get week of year and week of month being used. Total number of days in month is used. This day of the week is not used, okay, because it changes from calendar to calendar, and this name of the day is also not used. Okay, so mostly week, then month, then subtracting days, and then the age information. These are some of the informations, or these are some of the functions which are actually used. Okay, now these were your date functions and duration functions. And now we'll switch to the second tab, which is this number functions. Okay, so let me delete the steps because the number of columns have increased significantly. So I will just delete the steps.
So Anurag this side.
Yeah.
Do we have to delete the steps in a progression, like we have to first delete the latest one, then the next one, and so on,
Yes.
like you did just now?
Yes. I'll show you. Okay. Let me do one thing and you'll see the output. So I extracted here. Okay. Now I go here and I select this date. I select month and I extract days in month. Okay. Now Anurag, I have extracted two information, year and days in month, right? And now let me try to delete the year step. Okay. When I click on this cross, see what happens. Did we see this pop up when I was deleting from the last? No, right? Since you're deleting it from the middle, it will ask you this question. Are you sure you want to delete this step? Deleting this step may affect subsequent steps, which could cause your query to break. So let's say if I have created this year column and I use this year column in the days in month column. So in that case, what could happen is it could break the days in month column also. That is why it is recommended you start deleting from the last step. Okay, clear with this, Anurag?
Yep, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next set of functions that we will see are number functions. So number functions will be enabled whenever you have data type as 123 dollar or 1.2. So this is 1.2, this is 123, like that. Okay, so these are the common data types that are usually recommended to perform the numerical calculation. So for numerical calculation, I can perform addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, rounding. Then I can find minimum, maximum between multiple columns. I can calculate average of columns. Those are the common functions which are available. Okay, so let's start now. So the first function that we will see is addition. So let's say I have this maintenance cost 1, maintenance cost 2, maintenance cost 3, maintenance cost 4, and maintenance cost 5. So what I want to do now is I want to add all these 5 columns and I want to store their output in a new column. Okay, so for that, let me select maintenance cost 1, maintenance cost 2, maintenance cost 3, maintenance cost 4, and maintenance cost 5. These are my 5 columns. So I want to add all these columns and I want to store their output in a new column. So for that, go to add column, go to standard, and from standard select add. What it will do is it will add, for every row it will add all the 5 column values and it will store it in a new cell. Okay, now exactly similar to this, let's say I want to add, I don't want to add multiple columns, I just want to pick up a single column and I want to add a value into it. Even that is possible. So select this column, go to standard, and from here let's say I want to add something. So let's say I want to add 1111. So for that, since I have selected only one column, it will ask me select a value to add. From here also I can select a column. Okay, so I can say instead of this ABC123, I can select use values in a column, and I can select any other column and I can add it. That is also possible. But if you want to add a value, select this option ABC123, enter a value, and in here I specify 1111. So when I do this, a new column gets created, and between these two columns the difference would be 1111. Okay, the next function is obviously subtraction. So I can create these two columns. So column 1 minus column 2, standard, and subtract. I should get the output as 1111. Okay, the next function is multiplication. So I can select this column, I can select this column, and I can go to standard and I can do the multiply. Okay, so this is how your multiplication also works. Now the next function that we will see is divide. Okay, so in divide what happens is there are 2 types of divide which are supported as part of programming concept. So the first division is called as floating point division, and second division is what we call it as integer division. Okay, so what is floating point division? When I divide 5 by 2 and I get output as 2.5, then this is called as floating point division, because in this case I got the answer as 2.5. okay, but when I divide 5 by 2, okay, and I get output as 2, then this is called as integer division. In case of integer division, you try to divide the number completely. So in this case I tried 2 ones are 2, 2 twos are 4, and after that remainder was 1, and 1 cannot be divided by 2, hence the operation stopped here itself. So when I want 2.5 as the output, then I use the floating point division, and when I want 2 as my output, then I use the integer division. Okay, one important thing to note in case of integer division is there will always be a remainder. Okay, so if you want to get the remainder, you have to use an operator which we call it as modulus operator. So modulus operator will always give you the remainder. So when I do 5 modulo 2, so in that case 2 ones are 2, 2 twos are 4, and afterwards the remainder is 1. So this will give me the remainder as 1. Okay, so floating point division, integer point division, and modulo. So modulo gives remainder of integer division. Clear with this? Okay, now let's say I want to perform the floating point division. So I want to divide this value by this value. So I select this divided by this. I go to standard and I select the first operator, which is divide. So this divide means floating point division. So see the answer, The answer is in floating point division. You can see the output. Okay. The next division which I talked about was integer division. So I select this divided by this. I select divide integer. Now see the output. If you carefully observe the output is a whole number 1, 2, 3. There is no decimal place. So the moment we reached this limit, it stopped. It didn't divide it completely with the help of decimal places. It has just stopped at then here itself. That is why this is called as integer division. Okay. And the third one which I told you was modulus. So if I want to get the remainder of integer division, I can select this, then this. I can go to standard and I can select modulo. So modulo will give me the remainder of my integer division operation. So this is the remainder of your integer division operation. Clear with this?
Yes.
Okay. The next thing is, let's say I have this column and I want to calculate 5% of it, 5% of every value that is present within this column, and I want to store it in a new column. So for that, I can go to standard, I can say percentage. So it will ask me how much percentage I actually want to calculate. So let's say if I say I want 5% of each value and I want to store it in a new column. So I select 5%, I click on OK. Okay, so in here, I see the percentage being calculated. And the reverse case is where I want to see this value is how much percentage of this. So in that case, select this, and say percentage of. So in this case, it will give you 5 as the answer. Okay, so this is your percentage and percent of. Okay, the next operator is related to your rounding. So when you see this modulo output, in this case of modulo, you have up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 decimal places. Your answer is up to 7 decimal places. But let's say I want to only keep it up to 2 decimal places. So for that, I have rounding option. So in rounding, you will see 3 options. One is called as round up, the second is called as round down, and third is the round. So this third option is what we usually have used. Greater than 5 or equal to 5, we round it to the next digit, and less than 5, we keep it as is. This is that round. But apart from that, you have this round up and round down option also available. So what is this round up and round down option? Let's take an example. So when I say this 1.5 value, okay, so when I say this is my value 1.5, this 1.5 value is between 1 and between 2, right? So when I carefully see this value 1.5, it is between 1 and 2. So when I want to get 1 as my value, then in that case, I can use round down. And when I want to get 2 as my value, then I can use the round up function. Okay, clear with this? In databases, we call the round down function as my floor function, and round up function is called as C. Okay, so this 1.5 value resides between 1 and 2. So if I want to get 1, I can do round down, and if I want to get 2, I can do round up. Let me show you the output here. I have this value 435.43. So this 435.43 resides between 435 and 436. So let's say if I want to get 435. So for that, I will do round down. See the output, 435. But if I want to get 436, then in that case, I will select this. I'll do round down. I'll see the output as 436. Oh, sorry, I deselected round down again. Round up. Rounding, round up. Yeah. 435, 436, like that. Okay. Similar to this, if I want to do the actual rounding, now this is the third option for actual rounding. Now here it will ask you up to how many decimal places you want your value. So I'll say I want my value up to 2 decimal places. So I'll click on OK. Done. And you can see every value here is up to 2 decimal places. Clear with this? Any questions? Okay. Moving on. Let's say if I want to understand, or if I want to get how many even values are there or how many odd values are there. Hello.
Yep.
Okay. So let's say if I want to understand how many even values are there or how many odd values are there, So in that case, I can select the information pan, and from here I can select the option is even. What it will do is it will create a new column and it will store true false within that column. So if your value is even, it will give you output as true, and if your value is odd, it will give you false. So you can see the data type of this column is true false. This is only storing true false. So in this case, if your value is even, for example, in this case, it is giving us the true. But if your value is odd, then it is giving you false. Exactly similar to this, you have the second function, which we call it as is odd. So I select this, I do is odd. Is odd will give you the exact opposite output. So if your value is odd, it will give you true, and if your value is even, it will give you false. Okay. Exactly similar to this, we have one more function, which we call it as the information. So this information function gives you 3 types of values. If your value is positive, it will give you sign function. So this sign function gives you 3 types of output. If your value is positive, it will give you +1. If your value is negative, it will give you -1, and if your value is 0, it will give you 0. Okay, so let me pick up the right column for this. Okay, I think this column has lot of zeros, but we don't have any negative values. Anyways, we can use this column. So let's say I use this column, I click on information and I click on sign. So in this case, this column doesn't have any negative value. So in the output, you will have either 1 or 0. But if this column has negative value, it will also give you -1 as the output. Okay, so this is your information. Apart from that, you can use these functions for trigonometry like sine, cosine, tangent, like that. If you want to calculate scientific operations like absolute, so absolute will remove the negative sign. If you want to calculate power like square, cube, and if you want to go above that, you have the power function, you have square root, you have exponent function, you have logarithm base to the 10, base to the natural logarithm exponent, and you have factorial functions. Okay. Now, similar to this, you can also do your statistics functions. Okay.
Sir,
Yeah.
yeah, actually, I want to ask if we want to change the value from a particular row, so how to change it?
From particular row, you will not be able to change it, Rahul.
Okay.
Okay. I can only do the operations on the columns here. Try to understand it from this perspective that you are going to plot the visualizations with the help of columns, right? So
Okay.
column wise operations are allowed here, row wise operations are not allowed. And like I said earlier also, editing any cell is not possible here. I can just see this value. Max to max, I can extract something out of it. I can create new columns out of it, but I cannot change this specific cell value in the Power Query or in Power BI desktop. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next thing that we will see is this statistic function. So whenever you select a single column, this statistic function usually is not enabled. So for this to be enabled, you have to select at least 2 columns. Okay. So when I select these 2 columns, see the statistic function is enabled. So in statistics, we have sum, minimum, maximum, median, average, standard deviation, and count values and count distinct values. Okay. So let's say I select the first function, which is minimum. So when I select minimum, it will calculate the minimum between these 2 columns and it will store it in a new column. See, this is my minimum. Exactly similar to this minimum, I can also calculate maximum. So I select these 3 columns, I go and I select maximum. It will give me maximum. If I want to calculate average of all these 4 columns, I can go to statistics and I can select average. So in this case, I've selected 4 columns. So it will add 1 value plus 2 value plus 3 value plus 4 divided by 4. If I select 5 columns, it will divide 5, it will add 5 values and it will divide it by 5. So this is my average. If I select this, I go to statistics, I click on standard deviation, it gives me the standard deviation. Okay, so like this, you can calculate standard deviation, minimum, maximum, average. If I want to count the distinct values, I can also count the distinct values. So if I select all these columns and I go to statistics and I say count distinct values, so it will count only the distinct values. Okay, so if a value is appearing twice, it would not be counted. Okay, so in this case, some of the values would be counted only once. Okay, so this is your count and count distinct difference. Okay, clear with this part? Yeah. So these are your number functions. Okay. Now should we stop or should we continue? Because these are like a lot of functions. So what does everyone say? We continue again from here. So there is this one tab remaining, which is from text. So I can start that and maybe we can continue in the next session.
So from my side, it will be better if you take some revision.
Okay.
Sir, please take a revision now.
Okay. Okay. So in today's session, what we have learned is the date functions. So in date functions, we have different outputs. Okay, so what are those outputs and what are this, what we are expecting? Sometimes what happens is you get those columns and the information that you need to plot your data is not present. So in that case, you will have to do the operations. So in order to do any operation, you have 2 tabs here. One is transform tab, the other is add column tab. So in case of what is the difference between transform tab and add column tab? In case of transform tab, if I perform any operation, it changes the existing column value. And if I do the same step from add column, a new column is created and the value is stored in that new column. Okay. Now in this case, we saw the first function. The first function was related to date. So when I select this column and when I go to date, these are the list of options that are available here. So from here, you can extract year information. So when I go to year, I see year function, which will give me the year information. Exactly similar to this, I can get the start of year and end of year also. So start of year will give me the start of the year. So usually start of year is 1st January and end of year is usually 31st December. So you can create this and you can store it in the new column. Exactly similar to this, you have this month function. So in month, you can get the name of the month number between 1 to 12. You can also get that. And you can also get the days in month, meaning how many days were there in that specific month and year. Exactly similar to this, you can get the quarter of the year also. So when I select quarter of the year, it will give me information between 1 to 4. So 1 means quarter 1, 4 means quarter 4. So 1 means usually Jan to March and 4 means obviously October to December. Exactly similar to this, I can get start of quarter and end of quarter also. So this start of quarter and end of quarter will vary based on your dates. Okay, so for example, if I am in January, then start of quarter is 1st January, end of quarter is 31st March. Then the next quarter is 1st April to 30th June. Then I have the next quarter as 1st July to 30 September. And then we have 1st October to 31st December. Like that, you can get it with the help of start of quarter and end of quarter. With the help of week function, I can get week of year. So week of year means in a week, in a year, I have close to 53 weeks. So it will give me a number between 1 to 53 depending on your date. So if your date falls on whatever week, it will give me that information. Exactly similar to this, I can get the week of month also. So in a month, I can have 5 to 6 weeks at max. So it will give me a number between 1 to 6. Okay. So in your whatever week it falls in, it will give me that information. Okay. Example, and similar to this, we have start of week and end of week. So start of week based on your calendar, it will give you the start of week and it will give you the end of week. In the day, I will get the day information, like what day it is, the day of the week also. So day of the week usually returns 0 to 6 and it depends on your calendar. In my calendar, Sunday is the first day. So that's why it will return 0 for Sunday and 6 for Saturday. If you want to get the name of the day, like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, you can use the name of day function. Okay. If you have multiple columns and if you want multiple date columns and if you want to subtract it, then you can use the subtract days option. So I can select this and I can see the subtract days option being enabled. So it will give me the difference between these two dates. So this difference will be in the number of days. Exactly similar to this, if I have multiple date columns and if I want to find the smallest date out of those columns, then I can use the earliest function. And exactly similar to this, if I want to find this latest date out of that, the biggest date out of that, then I can select the latest function. Okay. And the last function that we saw here was age. So age function will give you the difference between today's date and the column that you selected. And this difference will be in the form of duration. So this duration format is total number of days dot total number of hours colon total number of minutes colon total number of seconds. This is how the date format is, the duration format is. And from the duration format, you can click the duration format and you can get the total years, the information in total years, information in total days. In here, there is no option to select the total month. So if I need information in total month, there are multiple ways. First way is get the total number of days and then divide it by 365 and multiply it by 12, or get the total number of years and multiply it by 12. One and the same thing. Okay. That is how you can get it. So that was your age. The next set of functions which we saw was standard functions, the number functions. So for number functions to be enabled, you should select the numerical columns. I'll select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when you select these columns, the number functions are enabled. So we have seen addition. So we can add multiple columns or we can add a single value to a column also. We can subtract, we can multiply. In case of divide, we have two operations, divide and divide integer. So one is floating point, the other is integer. So when we say floating point, in that case, what will happen is when I divide 5 by 2, I'll get 2.5. That means floating point result. When I want to get the integer point result, the integer result as my division operation. So in that case, I select the integer division. Okay. And I select modulo if I want to get the remainder of integer division. The next thing is your percentage. So if I want to calculate percentage of a specific column for every value and I want to store it in the new column, then I use the percentage option. But if I want to find out that this column value is how much percentage of this column value, then I can use the percent of. Okay. The next function that we saw was rounding. So in case of rounding, we have three options: round up, round down, and the rounding function. So if I have a value called as 1.5 and if I want to get 2 as my output, then I can use round up option. if I want to get 1 as my value, then I can use the round down option. Okay, and if I want to do the actual rounding, then I have rounding option. I select round, I specify how many, up to how many digits I want, I can select that. Exactly similar to this, if I want to get how many values are even and how many values are odd, then I can get it with the help of is even and is odd function. So is even will return me true if my value is even, and it will return me false if my value is odd. Exactly opposite to this is odd. So is odd will return you true if your value is odd, and it will return you false if your value is even. Okay, and the third function that we saw was sign. So sign function also returns 3 types of values for a given specific column. If the value is positive, it will return you +1. If the value is negative, it will return you -1, and if the value is 0, it will return you 0. Exactly similar to this, we saw the statistics function. So for statistics to be enabled, you have to select at least 2 columns. So when I select 2 columns here, the statistics is enabled. So from this statistics, I can select sum. So sum would be exactly similar to your addition. So that's why I didn't show this, but we did minimum. So from these 2 columns, whatever is the minimum value will be stored in the new column. Similar is the maximum. I have average also. So average will be the column selected divided by number of columns. So in this case, I have selected 2 columns. So it will be 1 + 2 divided by 2. That is how the average will be calculated. Then we have standard deviation. Standard deviation would be calculated from the mean average. And then we have count values and count distinct. So count value will count the number of values, and count distinct will count you the different values, the difference values that are there. Okay, apart from that, you have scientific functions here like absolute value, power. So you can calculate absolute value, you can calculate power, those type of operations you can do it from here. Then you can calculate square root, exponent, logarithm, factorial, those options. Okay, and then we have the option to do the trigonometric functions also from here. So from here you can apply sine, cosine, tangent if you want to apply that. Okay, so these are the operations that we have seen as part of today's session. Any questions?